folks, we're going to start. Thank you all very much for coming. And our guest today is Vivian Henry from the Nez Perce National Historical Park. And we actually gave her 2 jobs today. One job, this one, is to talk about the park and answer your questions about the Nez Perce Park and the park sites. How many sites are in Wallowa County?
At least 3.
Pretty good. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. I had to check myself there, yeah. How many sites are there all total? There are a lot. She's going to tell us.
It's not a quiz. It's not a quiz.
It's not a quiz, yeah. But at any rate,
No, I do more.
I I hadn't thought of this beforehand, but I have a story that goes with this. When there was a legislation proposed, at first the Nez Perce National Historical Park was only in Idaho. Right? And there was a proposal to extend it to Washington, Oregon, and Montana.
Yes.
And at the time, Mark Hatfield was our senator. And Hatfield would not contravene county commissioners on anything, okay? So the legislation was stalled, and Rick Bailey was promoting a Chief Joseph National Park. And it was going to be in Hills Canyon. And it was, it all got confused. And so Ralph Swinehart and I went up and talked to the county commissioners and said, this is not Rick Bailey's proposal. This is the park that already exists that wants to extend to Oregon. And they freed it up, and Hatfield voted for it. And so anyway, that's my involvement with the Nez Perce National Historical Park. And Alvin Josephy was also one of the first big promoters of the early days. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, Vivian, go ahead.
All right. As I said, my name is Vivian Henry, and I'm a ranger at the Nez Perce National Historical Park. Can everybody hear me in the back?
Yep.
All right. I'm also an enrolled member of the Nez Perce tribe. Lived there most of my life. The park is actually 38 sites in 4 states: Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and Montana. And as he said, it was originally in just the state of Idaho. It's been established in 1865. So it's been a while. To get to the state park, it was quite a leap. The Nez Perce have been involved in Northwest history from the very beginning of people moving out this way. We had Lewis and Clark. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. We had Lewis and Clark that came through, and the Nez Perce were instrumental. We found them coming over out of the Blijk Prairie. They contacted us. They were starving. They had lost their way on the trail. They were starving, so we fed them. And the Blijk Prairie and the Mussel Shell Meadow are one of our main park sites. You can go up there. The Mussel Shell Meadow it's a beautiful meadow where they collect the chemists, and that is the actual starting point of the Nez Perce Trail that goes up over the mountain that they've been using for hundreds of years. There's legend that says that the Nez Perce Trail over the mountains into over the Bitterroots into Montana was given to us by the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear had adopted a small boy, and he was lonesome and wanted to go back to his people. And so the grizzly bear had him up in the mountains and was teaching him all these things. So she took him back home, but told him to teach the people the path over the mountains. And so that is the path that they use that was taught to them by the grizzly bear. And so that Nez Perce Trail is still there. You can still see it. You can still travel it, preferably by horse. The Nez Perce, when they went over the mountains, they went up and over the ridges in the saddles, this way. And so if you go up to the Mussel Shell Meadow, there is an entrance. They've got a gate, and there's signage that'll tell you, this is the trail, the beginning of the trail. Following over the trail is pretty interesting, because when you get to the higher elevations, you don't have like regular grass, right? You have a lot of bare grass. Your horses can't eat bare grass. They can't stomach it. And also there's not a lot of water up there, you know, just like creeks and streams. And so you have to know where to stop to feed your water your horses if you're going that way. And so if you follow the Nez Perce Trail, you got to know where to stop, where the meadows are. Also up on the Blijk Prairie in Idaho is the Blijk Prairie. Like I said, that's where we met Lewis and Clark. Fed them the salmon. The salmon was extremely rich in oil, nice fatty food, and we fed them the baked camas. There was lots of baked camas, and they just gorged themselves. Tastes so good. Camas, if you haven't tasted camas, it's got like a, I think it's like a teriyaki type flavor. It kind of depends on the grasses they cook with it, but it caramelizes when they bake it underground, and so it becomes very, very kind of sweet. So here they are, I mean, coming over the mountains and starving, and then they gorge themselves on this very rich stuff. Made them very, very sick because they didn't go in small amounts. And then they felt like we were poisoning them. No. So anyway, they take them, so you up on the prairie, you have the Mussel Shell Meadow, and then you have the Blijk Prairie. And the Blijk Prairie is also a nice place where we do a lot of citizen science. They've been taking, at that area before the park took it, or, you know, purchased it, and there was a farming. They were farming it, and there was cattle on it. And so the chemist was dying off. And so the park purchased this important space in history, and they have been kind of reworking the land. When chemist needs wet feed, it needs to be in an area that's kind of not like marshy, but wet. And in the spring, and then it kind of soaks in and dries up. So in order to work that land, they had dug canals and kind of drained the land off. So some of that has been filled and blocked, and so now we have good chemists coming in again. No more cows eating the chemists. You know? And so it is kind of coming back. There are seats up front if you're interested. And so it's an important site. With the citizen science, we have 4 high schools that have been helping our natural resource program, and they come up and they do monitoring of the chemists, how big, and we have, it's all, they have certain spots on the GPS where you're gonna count how many grasses, how many camas bulbs plants grow with at least 2 leaves, and then how many flowers you see. And so the kids are out there and they're monitoring, and they get to learn how to use the GPS, and they get to know the scientific measuring and all this stuff. It's fun, and we've been doing it for several years, plus it gives us really good data if what we're doing is helping the chemists, you know.
Are
And
the
then
bulbs getting bigger?
I don't know if they're counting size. I know they're counting amounts.
Okay.
There's also monitoring the invasive species in that area. So we do have certain plants that the kids also have to note, you know, if they have the hawkweed or, you know, those types of things in the area they're in. And so that also helps the natural resource people to know they can go out and spray in certain areas to try to keep some of the invasive species from taking over the species we're trying to get. Yeah. So those are 2 really big sites. And then you come down, so those were Lewis and Clark sites. And then they brought the Coral Discovery crew down the mountain into what is now the Orofino area. And we do have the Canoe Camp, what we call Canoe Camp. It's the space where they brought them to help dig out their canoes. And it's directly across from the Dorshak Dam, beautiful place on the river, lots of big trees, and it's a key spot. You know, we help them. They felled a tree in the journals. You can tell they felled their trees. They did 5 trees, and remember they weren't feeling real well. They were starving, and then they gorged themselves. And so then they start digging out their big old trees for their canoe. And the Nez Perce kind of watched them for a while. And then they drop a tree of their own, and what they did was they burned them. You burn it, and then you scrape the char, and then you let the fire work, and you scrape the char. And it didn't take long for the Coyote Discovery to come over and say, show us how we're doing that, because they had surpassed them very fast. And so that was a key spot. You know, they helped them get them on their road. The Nez Perce kept their horses for them and some of their other gear. Showed them, follow the river, it'll take you straight to the ocean. Yeah. And so the Canoe Camp is an important area in history. You know, and so last Lewis and Clark site that we have is when they came back. So they were gone and they came back, and they just passed Orfino area, up the river, maybe 15 more miles, is the other side of Kamei. Kamei is like 9 miles, but on the other side of Kamei, we have Long Camp. And the Coyote Discovery was really good with all their names, right? Long Camp. Canoe Camp, Long Camp. You know? So we have the Long Camp. You actually, when you get to our site that says it's Long Camp, it is one of the big brown historical site signs, because where the actual Long Camp is, there's a huge lumber mill there. But it tells you across the river that's where it was. So it's more a big wayside, but that was where they stayed the longest. They were all excited. They had been to the ocean. They come back. They wanted to go back east. So we told them, you can't go back over the mountain. There's just too much snow. Well, they insisted, so they take off. They got lost again and got stuck in too much snow, and they ended up coming back. And so that's where they camped the longest, because they had to wait for the snow. There was just no way going back across. And so that is, you know, a good spot. And then when it was ready to go back, we told them the snow's gone, you can get back over the mountain, and then Nez Perce sent somebody with them so they didn't get lost again back over the mountain. So those are our 4 key Lewis and Clark sites. Before that, we have several legend sites. One of our biggest legend sites is the Heart of the Monster in Kamei, Idaho. Heart of the Monster is where the creation story of the Nez Perce is. It's where we believe we came from. There was in the legend time before the humans came and the animals could talk. And they had all their little jobs that they were given by Creator to do. And so story has it that Coyote is downriver, and he's getting ready to build a fish trap, and he's just having a good time, and Magpie comes flying by. Magpie's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you bothering with this? Everybody's gone. Everybody's been eaten. Coyote's like, what do you mean? So I'm going to build this fish trap and have a big feast. Well, nobody's here. Nobody can eat at your feast. And so Magpie flies off, and Coyote was like, oh, there isn't anybody around. He kind of noticed the lack of people. So he starts kind of walking upriver, and he steps on the leg of Meadowlark, breaks her leg. She's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to watch where you're going. So he says, excuse me, Auntie, I'm sorry. I heard that there was a monster. I was looking for the people. I heard the monster had eaten the people. If I fix your leg, will you tell me what to do or where to go? So he fixes her leg with a small twig, and Meadowlark tells him, the monster has eaten all the people upriver, and that's why I'm going downriver. And so Coyote is like thinking about it real hard. Well, I better go see what's wrong with the people. So he gathers his backpack, and in his backpack he puts 5 flint knives. He has some rope, and he has some different roots and berries, because he knew the Creator had told them that the humans were coming. So he goes up and he's walking around, looking around, and the ground starts to shake. And he had looked around the canyon. He sees the most biggest, huge monster that he'd ever seen, and it's shaking the ground. and it's just sucking up the people, and they're just flying through the air, and he's like, oh no. And so he's like, ties himself to 3 different mountains, the Seven Devils and Pilot Knob, and the last, must have been one of the 7 Devils. Anyway, ties himself out, and he yells, hey, monster, come eat me. Well, of course, the monster had heard of Coyote. It's like, I don't want to eat you. You probably taste bad. So anyway, there's some back and forth. And finally, the monster gets mad. He sucks up Coyote. He's like, Coyote's flying through the air, and he reaches in his bag, and he drops and spreads all the seeds for the roots and things that the people are going to need to eat. So once inside the monster, he's kind of walking through, coming down the throat, and he feels bad. So he finds all the bones of all these different animals just gone. Like, oh no, I'm too late. So he keeps walking and walking. And all of a sudden he hears this roar, and he feels this big fast wind by his face. And it's a grizzly bear. A grizzly bear had taken a swipe at him. And he reaches out and he punches grizzly bear in the nose and bends his nose straight up. So if you ever see a grizzly bear and you're not sure if it's a grizzly bear, look at his nose. If it goes up a little bit, that's a grizzly bear. So he's like, what are you doing? I'm sorry, Coyote. I got eaten by a monster. I didn't know what to do. Well, you don't hurt the people that have come to help you. And so Coyote continues on. And he hears this, and something tries to bite him. He's like, ah! And he stomps on it. And it was rattlesnake. So what are you doing? And he had flattened rattlesnake's head. So if you see a snake and you're not sure if it's a rattlesnake, his head's going to be a little bit flatter than the rest of the snakes. Because Coyote had stomped on him. It's like, what are you doing? I'm here to help. And he said, Coyote, I got eaten by a monster. I didn't know what to do. Well, I'm here to figure it out. Just don't bite the people that are here to help you. So rattlesnake slithers off. Let me grab some more. I keep coughing. All this talking. So anyway, he's going down, and Fox comes running up. Coyote, 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 Coyote. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I knew the people were coming. I told the people you were coming. I told them they were coming. I knew it. Coyote will be here. He'll know what to do. Coyote, Coyote, what do we do? Coyote's like, okay, settle down. I want you to get all the people and have them build a fire. We gather everything that'll burn, all these sticks and everything that were sucked up. Build this big fire under the heart. So all the animals are gathering, building this big fire. He says, okay, I want you to also gather all the bones of all the people that are gone. All the bones, and you have to place them at the entrances of the monster. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the anus. Because when we leave, we're all going to go at the same time. And so some of them are gathering the bones and placing them at the entrances. And some of them are gathering wood, and they're building this big fire under the heart of the monster. Coyote jumps on the monster's heart, and he pulls out one of his flint knives. And he's cutting and cutting on the muscles that are holding that heart on. And the monster's like, whoo, heartburn, bad. He's like, I knew I shouldn't have eaten that coyote. And he's feeling around it. And Coyote snaps his flint knife, and he's like, oh no. And so he pulls out another one, and then he's like, keep building that fire and gather those bones. And so there all the animals are working, and Coyote's cutting. He's down to his last flint knife, and the monster's just flailing. He's hurting bad. But the heart's just hanging on by a little bit, and he grabs it with his teeth, and he's ripping at it. And finally, the monster's heart falls into the fire. And he's flailing around, and Coyote's like, everybody run! And everybody grabs the bones, and they're running out of the monster, and the eyes, ears, the nose, the mouth, the anus. And just as the monsters die, he's like, oh. And everything just shuts down. But the muskrat was just about out. Anyway, and he's coming out the anus, and they're grabbing him and pulling him, and they pull him out of there. And he always got no hair on his tail, because he pulled it all off. So now he's like, okay, what are we going to do? And the animals are like, oh no. Coyote says, bring me some water. They bring him some water, and he sprinkles the water on all the bones, and all the animals come back to life. So he saved them all. Okay, now grab what you can that will cut, anything that will cut. And all the animals jump on that monster and they start cutting, and everybody's cutting sharp rocks and sharp sticks, and they get that monster all cut up. And Coyote takes these big pieces of monster and he throws them in all the different directions. And as he's doing that, he names the people. And this will be the Colvilles, and this will be the Paiute, and this will be the Coeur d'Alene, and he names all these different tribes with these big pieces of monster. And Fox comes running up again. Coyote, Coyote, Coyote. This is the best place, but you've left nothing left. What about this place? What about this place? There's no people here. Coyote's like, now you tell me there's not much monster left. Okay, bring me some water. So they bring him some water, and now by now everybody's pretty bloody with monster, right? That was a big monster. So he's washing his hands, he's rubbing and he's sinking, and he shakes the bloody water into the ground. And the people come up. He says, these will be the Namipu. They'll be short of stature, but strong and brave, because they've come from the heart of the monster. And so that's the story. So when you go to the heart of the monster site, if you go, it's also a nice little rest area, but if you walk up the stairs, there's a little lookout. You can look out over and see the heart. And it's a big basalt rock. And it's got these plants that in the fall, they turn bright red. So it kind of looks like it's a heart, it's red. And so there is a panel on the wall. You can push the panel on the wall, and you were told the story, and it's a shortened version of the story by one of the elders, but he tells it in the Nez Perce language. And it has the English words you can kind of follow along. But if you go out and you follow the path out to where the trees are, kind of more in front of the heart, there's a black post. You push that post and have a seat. And you're told the full story of the heart of the monster by one of the tribal elders. The stories are a little different. That's one of the things about the Nez Perce legends. They tend to, there was no written language. They kind of, if you had an emphasis on a certain part that you wanted to emphasize, like don't bite the people that come to help you, you might emphasize those things a little more. So the stories change. Excuse me. Another of our legend sites, just across the river from the museum itself, is the Ant and Yellow Jacket. And that is also another rock, basalt rock creation. And it's a arch. And the legend says that it's the ant and the yellow jacket fighting, and Coyote turned them to stone. And the story there is that you don't fight with your friends or your family. There's enough room for everybody. And so down more towards Lewiston, there's another legend site for the park, and that is Coyote's Fishnet. And as you're looking at it, you're on one side of the river, and you're looking at, and Coyote got upset and threw his fishnet up there. And it's this huge hooped fishnet. And some people think, they're looking for something small, but it's the actual canyon of the hillside. And if you look at it, you can see this big, it's a big hoop like a dipnet would be. And Coyote had got mad and thrown Bear up on a hillside behind him. So if you look up behind you while you're standing there, there is an outline of grizzly bear on the hillside in basalt. So that's another one of our legend sites. When you go to the river, the Snake River, there's an area that is called Buffalo Eddy. Buffalo Eddy is a site that is In the middle of the river is one of the deepest spots in Snake River, right at Buffalo Eddy's crossing. On the Washington side is the actual park site. Idaho side is privately owned. But the characteristic and why this side is important is both sides are filled with petroglyphs. The Idaho side actually has dozens of pictographs also, and so it's kind of interesting if you can get over on that side. But because that site is one of the deepest spots in the river, there would have always been water there. You think about it before the dams and stuff. Water runs downhill. When you're out there, it can be really dry, it can be really, really hot. You're in the middle and there's no trees, nothing. And so if you needed to know where the water was or a crossing place, this is gonna be it. There's gonna always be water there. As you go across, you'll know if you're in the river, you're standing at Buffalo Eddy, the river goes in different directions. The eddies there, when there's a lot of water, are treacherous. The water just swirls. I mean, it swirls deep. There's been a lot of people that have drowned there, think, oh, we can jump off the rocks and swim and things. It's not a place you want to swim with eddies that deep. Lots and lots of petroglyphs. On the Idaho side, if you look, and you look up the canyon, like, you know, they would come across and then go up. That canyon is kind of green. There's a spring up there. And so it was a really good place to cross, because if you were crossing, you would find water at the river. As you're going up in the heat, there's a spring up there. There's a fresh spring. So, like I said, the Idaho side does have quite a few pictographs, really nice ones. They used to let the public access it, like the people on boats and tour groups and stuff. They started finding damage and trash and all these things, and so they cut that off. But they will let certain groups, by request, you know, to come in. So it's a really nice site, the petroglyphs. Another old site. I should have wrote a list and checked them off. Okay, so then you have the Buffalo Eddy petroglyphs. Keep looking.
And then the ones associated with the war, of course.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to go for the oldest.
The oldest sites.
I'm trying to go through age.
Okay.
Actually, the Lewis and Clark weren't the oldest, but they're kind of in a group. But as he says, those associated with the flight of 1877. We don't call it a war. It was a flight. War entails that there's two groups that are fighting against each other. Our warriors only fought to protect the women. They never set up battle stages or anything. It was just to keep them off while the women and children got away. And so that's not war, that's flight. So anyway, one of the first, or the first, would be Whitebird Battlefield. Whitebird Battlefield is about an hour and a half out of our area in Spalding, in the town of Little Whitebird. That is the first site of battles of Flight of 1877. The battlefield is signed and trails. You can go walk it and trails. There's a little rest area. They do have the war commemorations every year when the battles commemorate the battle. We do have rangers that will give guided walking tours if requested. To do a tour of anything, we request that you give us at least 2 weeks notice. 2 weeks in advance, so that we can schedule people to be where they need to be. Can't have too many things going on at once. In the wintertime, our staffing gets pretty low. But the Whitebird Battlefield is something you want to do either early spring or late fall. It can be really, really hot. It's pretty steep also, but it's breathtaking to go see it. The signage out there is gorgeous. They had a tribal artist that did all the pictures and signs. It's a nice trail. It's only like 1.5 miles. It's not real bad, but it's real moving. It's real moving battle. And so then you continue on up the hill from the White Bear Battlefield, and there's the Cottonwood skirmishes. So the Nez Perce were coming across the Cottonwood Prairie, the Camas Prairie, up by the town of Cottonwood, and there were some skirmishes, battles, and fights. And that area is basically just the Big Brown Historical Site signs, because there's some other things that the state of Idaho has put up. And so the Cottonwood skirmishes are going to tell you a little bit about what happened, but it's a sign garden. Yeah, I hate to tell you that, but it is. And so then you want to go over, let me think of how they went. Over by Stites, Clearwater Battlefield, because they went up over the mountain down into the Stites area. And so there was a small battle there. That's also a Big Brown Historical Site sign, because there's a big ranch there now. But they'll tell you that this is what happened. And in that area, if you get permission to go out there, there are rifle pits and things you can find out there. It's all been archaeologically figured. So the Clearwater Battlefield is there. They went across and they ended up on the Nez Perce Trail, went over the mountain. To realize that there, you've got all these people with 2,000 horses, and you've got grandmas and babies, and there weren't that many warriors. They were moving to that area with everything they owned. So it's pretty treacherous. Lola Pass is considered one of our sites when you get up over the mountain. A major site where you go up over. You get into Montana, and you have the Big Hole Battlefield. At the Big Hole Battlefield, there is a visitor center, has the movie, has rangers, everything there all the time. The Big Hole Battlefield was one of the key battles of the whole flight. We were in an area we didn't believe that, we thought we were safe. We were in an area we had gone to. A lot of people don't realize how natives fought and how they think. They didn't say we go down and we raid the Shoshone for horses. You go down there and you get out way and they chase you back for a while and then they quit. They don't continue on. It's like, haha, you got away with my horses. And then they might come back and raid, and it wasn't just nonstop, relentless. Because we didn't do that. And so we get up over the mountains, over the pass, and we're quite a ways away from these people that we were fighting with. And they start to gather their chemists, trying to figure out what are we going to do. And the military is not only coming from Idaho side, but from several forts in Montana are now converging. There was a fight early morning. The Nez Perce lost a lot of their belongings. The battlefield's very sad. They did Saturday was a commemoration for the Big Hole Battlefield. At that site, they do have a really nice museum. They have a movie of their own, talks about the battle. They have ranger talks, so you can go through the battlefield. They have the site where the soldiers were on the hill, and you can see their actual rifle pits where they dug in, where they brought a Gatling gun in up on the top. They have that spot marked where the teepees are. There's several teepee shells, like just the poles out on the actual battlefield. They attacked it like dawn. People are sleeping. It's a really sad place. We did get away, held them down. Actually, our warriors kind of held those soldiers in that area. That's why they had to dig out their rifle pits. They couldn't get any water. They attacked the Gatling gun, actually dismantled it and rolled it down the hill, and the people got away. There's several other sites as you go through Montana. Canyon Creek was another battle. It doesn't have the museum and stuff. The only places that have the museum and the visitor centers are going to be the Spalding area and the Big Hole Battlefield. So then you go down Canyon Creek. You could get up to the Bear Paw battlefield where it's like 35, 40 miles out of Montana, where the war actually ended. What happened was they were able to separate us from the horses. We had a herd of 200 horses, 2,000 horses. Anyway, separate us. There is a ranger stationed in the Bear Paw battlefield, but there's no place. They just come out. You can call them at the office number, and they come out and do tours and things. The Oregon sites, we're talking about the Oregon sites. We have the Joseph Canyon Overlook as you're driving over from Idaho. Down in the canyon was where the Joseph band lived. You have the gravesite of old Joseph out here by the lake. And then you have the Lostine home site where they camped, where they visit villages were actually at. Up on the Colville Reservation, you have the area after the war, and Joseph and the other tribes were sent to Kansas and Oklahoma in exile. And when Joseph's band came back, Joseph's people were not allowed to come to the reservation. The ranchers thought they were going to be dangerous. Joseph's a dangerous person, which is really far from the truth because he was kind of a gentle giant type person. And the missionaries, they only wanted them there if they would convert to Christianity. That wasn't going to happen. So anyway, they were sent to the Colville Reservation. So we have a large presence of Nez Perce people out on the Colville Reservation. So one of our sites is the cemetery, the Nez Perce Cemetery. That's not a site that we encourage people to go touristy around it, but it is a site that's there, right? We know it's there. We might tell people it's there, but we're not going to pinpoint everything. There's also a Nez Perce Village site, kind of like the Lostine area. It's just this is where the Nez Perce were sent. The Colville tribes, the reservation is the Colville Confederated Tribes. There are 12 tribes they crammed into this little tiny area. And then when the Nez Perce came back, those 5 groups, they stuck another group in there. And so they kind of had to shift out people and give them an area. So it's not a big area, but there are quite a few Nez Perce up there still. I think if I missed any. I know I didn't hit all 38. There's the Spalding area where the museum is. There's the Fort Lapway area where Fort Lapway was established. The St. Joseph's Mission, with the Catholic missions. And the church at St. Joseph's Mission was actually a church that was built by Father Cataldo, who built the big, huge Cataldo mission up, and instrumental on starting Gonzaga University. He built this tiny little church. At Pierce County Courthouse is one of our Nez Perce National Historical Park sites. It's the first courthouse in northern Idaho. And standing, it's a nice looking little building, but it's way up in the Pierce area. Mackenzie's Trading Post. As you go up the hill on Lewiston, like you're going to go up over the Blijk Prairie, there's a big sign garden that tells you about the area. Well, Mackenzie's Trading Post is one of those, and it was one of the trading post sites that was originally established. They didn't last long, but it is there.
Was that Hudson's Bay or not?
No, Mackenzie wasn't Hudson Bay.
Okay.
I believe he was
Okay. Yeah.
Hudson Bay, Northwestern? That's what it was. Anyway, so there are several little sites, but I hit the main big areas. Like I said, we have 38 sites total. Currently, we are open 7 days a week, 8:30 to 4. After September 22nd, we will go down to 5 days. We'll be closed Sundays and Mondays, and that's just staffing. You know, we lose our seasonal people. We do programs a regular basis. In the summertime, we have ranger programs every day at 11 and at 1:30, and it's kind of a ranger's choice. When it's not 100 degrees outside or the wind's really blowing, we set up our teepee every day. We take it down every day. We encourage visitors to come help us. The picnic area down below, this year where Reverend Spalding set up his mission in the 1830s. There are remnants of that mission there, and a lot of different things that Reverend Spalding had created. You know, like the raceway for his mill and things. The land is still cut in there. We do have this actual Spalding Church is still there. It's a still active church. We have the Watson store, which is a general mercantile from back in the 1940s, and it's still there. We recently put in new interpretation panels in the agent's cabin down in the historic area, and we have that open Saturdays, Sundays, and Tuesdays. The agent's cabin is actually the oldest building that we own, and it was built for the Indian agents. People ask, who is the Indian agent and what is an Indian agent? Well, they were the go-between between the government and the tribes with your monies and all these other assistance things. And so there's a lot of interpretive panels in the agent's cabin. So this is kind of my talk. I have some information about the park. If you're interested, give us a call. We do go to churches, we go to schools. Like I said, we have a citizen science program. We're always looking for people to work. But it's crazy though with government, we hire a lot of like college people in seasonal work, and they have to apply in November for a job in April, which doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, but that's the forest or the Park Service.
I wonder how many people here have visited the Spalding site.
Has anybody been to the Spalding site? Oh yeah, quite a few of you. Like I said, we're always interested in having you come over. I'm here today.
Go look in the warehouse at all the other canoes.
Yeah, we do have what you see in our museum upstairs, and we have a really nice movie. Our movie is really good. What you see is in our museum upstairs is just the tip of the iceberg. This year on Tuesdays, we are still currently giving guided tours downstairs into the collection, the big collection, all the bins and everything. She was taking 8 people at a time on Tuesdays at 11. And sometimes there's a big sign-up list, and sometimes there's nobody there. But it's not every day you get to go down and open all the drawers and see everything. You know, you may see 2 or 3 shirts out in the museum, and then open a cabinet and there's just shirts. You know, weapons, tools, everything is all down there. We have a state-of-the-art research center downstairs. We have a lot of people that access for research for the universities, you know, Washington State, University of Idaho, people writing books, people doing research, lots of primary documents in there. And this is all national park, anybody can access. But what they do ask is that you make an appointment, because the archivist does a lot of she wears a lot of hats. If you make an appointment with her, she will pull out the documentation that you need. She can find and have it ready for you. She can make sure she's there. Same with the collection. The collection is a national park collection. We do house a great deal of items that belong to the Nez Perce tribe. The national parks works very closely with the Nez Perce tribe. We can't tell the story without their input. It just doesn't work that way. The park was actually built with a collaboration between the tribe and the National Park Service. So they are very much partners. But the collection is also accessible to anybody if you make an appointment with the curator. They'll gladly go and open it up for you. It's national park. It's owned by the people. If you're paying taxes, you have access, even if you're not paying taxes, probably. Yeah. Yes.
Does the tribe have its own museum?
No. Like I said, they work closely with, and the park the park contains a large part of the items that the park shows belong to the tribe. And so we work very closely. Yes.
When you say tribe, does that acknowledge only lawyers people, the treaty Nez Perce, or the non-treaty as well?
No, the tribe is anybody enrolled in the Nez Perce tribe over the age of 18 that's an enrolled voting member. And so we are governed by a body of 9 that we vote and meet on. We meet in the general council every 6 months. So as long as you have a quarter blood and you have at least one parent that's an enrolled member of the tribe, you can be enrolled in the tribe. It doesn't, we don't really think too much about treaty, non-treaty anymore. That doesn't play a whole lot into it. Now we're pretty much working together. You have to. There's just too many other enemies trying to.
You might clarify that, because even among there were non-treaty that were basically within or adjacent to the Lapway Reservation.
Oh,
And
yeah.
after the war came back there.
Yeah.
I mean, after the war they split, and half of the survivors went to Lapway.
Yeah.
So they were non-treaty.
And there were non-treaty that never went on the war.
Yeah.
That always stayed.
Yeah.
And so it was, we don't really pay a whole lot.
On the other hand, you do work with the people of Colville too.
Oh, yes. Yes, the park is, we have people in the Umatilla area, and we have people on the Colville Reservation. And so part of the guiding of our national park is with the Nez Perce tribe, the Colville tribe, and the Umatilla tribe. Because at the end of the war, like you said, that there were 12 bands in Nez Perce. Only 5 were in the actual flight. Some of them returned. Joseph's band was sent to the Colville Reservation. And many people went to Canada. There were over 200 that made it to Canada. And as they start coming down, when they got home, they were grabbed by the federal people and sent to Kansas or Oklahoma. Well, the word goes out, don't come home. And so they went to the Umatilla Reservation because we had a lot of people already on the Umatilla Reservation. And so now there's a big bunch of Nez Perce on the Umatilla, on the Colville, on the Nez Perce, and there's still people in Canada. And so those bands, when they gathered as, bands, they are the people that guide us for the museum in the park.
Do you have formal relations with any of the Nez Perce in Canada? I know it's only been recently that people here have made contact, right?
No, from what I understand, that they've been contacting certain families that have have always had contact.
But there was a time when, like you said, people were afraid to identify as Nez Perce, that if they came across the border, they'd be snatched up. And
Right.
even years later, people were afraid that they'd be put in prison, is what I understand.
I can't say I don't know. Are there any other questions about the park? Yes, ma'am.
Are there pictographs at Buffalo Lake on the Washington side?
No, there aren't. There's just petroglyphs.
That's those.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what time of year was the camp in Joseph Canyon? Like, what time of year were they there camping?
I understand that the Joseph Canyon area was a winter camp because you're down in a lower elevation and you're protected by the hills. And in the springtime, you would have come up onto the prairie areas and harvested your roots. When it got hot, you would have went up into the pine trees up a little higher, gather your wild berries and huckleberries and stuff, and then the men would hunt. And then you would go down to the lower elevation. Are there any questions?
There's a fishing site on the Grand Ronde that kind of, you go from Joseph Creek that way, that I've heard about.
I don't know.
That was on Tibbet property, and apparently it was a fishing site. There's a ranch on Joseph Creek that were Indians. I imagine Nez Perce worked for the ranch in the teens and the 20s.
Yeah, we worked
You did,
that had
yeah.
stayed in the area.
Yeah.
One of the sites on the Nez Perce, for the park on the snake is Dubbar.
Yeah.
When the Nez Perce were leaving this area, they were given 30 days to leave. It's high spring, the water's fast. And they had to cross the Snake River at high spring water. So they made their bull boats and they crossed at Dubbar. And you can get down to Dubbar on this side. It's a nasty, windy road, but high clearance and four-wheel, you can do it. It's one of those areas that has the real strong eddies. And so you have the bull boats, and then what they do is you get the eddy to pull you across. There's a way to do it. They didn't lose anybody. They lost several cows. But can you imagine in the high spring water crossing the Snake River, and you had brand new babies that were days old, and you had really old grandmas and stuff, and you're putting them in this boat, putting them in that water, you know. It's scary, but they did it. They didn't lose anybody. They lost some cows. The military lost quite a few trying to cross. Yes, sir. And then Black.
So with so many different tribes forced into very small areas over years and decades, how do people keep separate identities, or how much mixing?
Families. It's families. They know. I honestly don't know. I can't say because the Nez Perce is only Nez Perce on our reservation. I mean, our blood is not, we're not the only ones, but our reservation, we don't have a lot of other tribes that were joined with us. They wanted to put us over with the Umatilla, and our elders were like, no, we're going to stay here on our own land. And so they negotiated the treaty to be over here. But I can't speak for others. I have no idea. Yes, sir.
Is this Nimiku Trail unique with the Park Service, or are there other units that document, commemorate, or present, say, the Cherokee expulsion with the Trail of Tears and other nefarious events in American?
The Nez Perce Trail is actually not National Park. The Nez Perce Trail is taken care of by the Forest Service. Trails are done by the Forest Service. Parks are done by the National Park. I honestly don't know. I've only worked at our park as a ranger. I imagine there's 420 different national parks in the nation. Sorry, I can't answer that one, but I'm sure you could look at nps.gov and find a listing of all the parks and things, and they could tell you.
Yeah, I wonder if and like you said, national trails are another item.
Yeah, the National Trail is the Forest Service. It's not the National Park. They're done by the Forest Service. So people confuse it. Trail and the park is, but we have several trail sites that are our park sites. But we maintain those, but the actual trail, the whole route, is Forest Service. Yes?
Your office is in Spalding?
Yes.
Yeah. And what are the hours of the museum there?
Until September 22nd, we will be open from 8:30 to 4, 7 days a week. After the 22nd, we will be open Tuesday through Saturday. We'll go back to 5 days a week. I mean, it'll still be 8:30 to 4.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
41 years ago, I started my first job with the Forest Service on the Clearwater up at Lolo Pass, and began learning about the Corps of Discovery and the Nimiku, and I have the privilege of going back up there this coming weekend for a reunion.
Oh, wow.
40th reunion of many, it's Forest Service folks, but
Yeah.
several of them were Nimiku, Nez Perce tribal members, because they hire a lot of KMEI.
Oh yeah.
And
Hire a lot
so,
of people.
so I'd love to stop in Spalding and get your recommendations also about some other sites to visit
Oh yeah.
in Idaho there.
One of the things I didn't tell you, the national park has the junior ranger programs. It's a great way for children to learn about the national parks and whatever focus that park is on. You know, like ours is the Nimipu. It's built so that the kids understand at a level that is theirs. Ours is going to be completely redone. We're scheduled to have our museum remodeled. And so they wanted to start this summer, and we told them we need our museum in the summer. This winter it's going to be completely gutted and completely redone. It hasn't changed for 50 years.
Wow.
No, since '79. Hasn't been quite 50 years since we've had the building. But it's going to be all updated. So at that point we'll write a new junior ranger book. But children can go throughout the nation and collecting badges and patches for junior rangers. And it really helps, especially when we were all locked down in COVID. We had a lot of people downloading our books on the internet and sending them to us, and then we send them their badges and patches and stuff. So it's a good way for them to. The Lewis and Clark Trail did a junior ranger book that we hand out at our park, because this is all about the tribes they met along the way, and the Nez Perce tribe is one of them. I am highlighted in this one. Yay. Nah. Because they found a ranger that was tribal. That's why they threw me in there. But this junior ranger book kind of teaches you things across the nation about the different tribes. And it actually won a big award last year for education for the kids. So anyway.
So we're going to talk to teachers this afternoon, but do you have school groups that come regularly?
Yes, April and May can be up to 2 school groups a day throughout most of the months, both of those. And it's generally 4th graders. 4th graders are learning their state's history, and so they come to learn about Idaho and the Nez Perce. 5th graders are learning about the nation's history. And so then they come to learn about Lewis and Clark coming through and the gold rush and all that kind of stuff. And so we get 4th and 5th graders from all over. And so it's like they start booking. We get morning classes, then we get afternoon classes. And
So book ahead.
book ahead.
Book ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
But we do get some that come in the winter. You know, it just depends on where they are and what they're doing. We get a lot of, and then there are some schools that don't have the funding anymore to bring their kids, and so we go to schools also.
Wonderful.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. And I told a couple of you that I was buying lunch. It wasn't me, but there's some lunch back there.